Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.
So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Health Hour, and it's a nice warm afternoon. And we are just so pleased to have our guest speaker here, Dr. Chidi. I'm not even going to try to say your last name. He goes by Dr. Chidi, so we'll keep it there, I think. So I first met Dr. Chidi last fall in Saskatoon at the University of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. He was giving a lecture. He was brought in by Dr. Carol Henry, and I was so impressed with the words that he had to say. So Dr. Chidi is one of the world's premier lifestyle doctors who uniquely has 4 degrees in science and medicine. Most of us are happy with 1 degree. He has 4. And he trained in surgery, general practice, and lifestyle medicine at Cambridge, UCL, Johns Hopkins, USA, under Dr. Ben Carson. He can reverse, improve, or prevent all chronic illnesses, including heart disease, cancer, arthritis, and diabetes. And I know that he has founded a couple of restaurants where he's seen the results of our lifestyle and how that works. He is founding board member of the European Society of Lifestyle Medicine, a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He has over 20 years of experience as a national and international health and motivational speaker, including TED Talk on reversing disease. Dr. Chidi is the Health Ministry Director of the South England Conference. His greatest joy is to promote health and mission in the 21st century. So we are so pleased, Dr. Chidi, that you have taken the time out of your busy schedule to fly over the pond. And it's a long flight, and he's here, and he's not even jet-lagged. He's tough. So before we start, can we just stand for prayer? Dear God in heaven, we thank you so much for the ability to learn. We thank you for the bodies that you have created and given to us. And Lord, we always need to learn better how to care for them. We thank you that you are the great healer, and we thank you that Dr. Chidi has come to teach us. And we ask your blessing on this meeting, and we ask this in your name. Amen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. As has been said, and as you can tell from my accent, I don't come from around here. That's great. I'm glad that's okay. But it's always a privilege and a pleasure to come over this side of the pond, or as we say in England, visit the colonies. It's you don't mind us saying that, I'm sure. But it's when I came here last year, I had such a wonderful time. The fellowship was so great. I was delighted to be invited by Glenda to come back, and it's a privilege to be here. This is a fantastic place. I mean, I wish I could have my own little campsite here. That would have been fantastic. Maybe later. But it's been a privilege in my life to get to this place of what I do, which is lifestyle medicine. I set up this system called Life Colors, and Life Colors really represents all the different lifestyle diseases that are crippling us in the world today. And we have ways and means to prevent and reverse these diseases from happening. And what you're going to find out this week, we're going to share with you ways to reverse the disease. Today we're going to focus on 2. We're going to talk about how to lose weight and reverse type 2 diabetes. Tomorrow we'll be looking at cancer. On Wednesday we'll look at how to reverse and prevent heart disease and blood pressure. Thursday we'll deal with depression. And on Friday we have a bonus session. I won't tell you about it. You have to come and see. But as I said, today we're going to deal with 2, diabetes and obesity. I like to put them together and just call it diabesity. And this is an issue that is really affecting most of us all in the Western world. Some of us think, well, I don't really need to talk about obesity because, I'm so slim. Many of us, I don't know if you know this, many of us who look quite slim actually have some of the worst fat in our bodies. I don't know if you know that. Some of these slim people have this fat that is not the subcutaneous fat that is obvious to see. We have this visceral fat. The visceral fat is the stuff that surrounds your heart and your kidneys and your liver. This is the stuff that leads to cancer and all the other problems. So even if you feel that you're a slim person, you may be one of these people we call TOFIs, T-O-F-I, thin outside, fat inside. So everybody needs to listen, myself included. So why don't we start by dealing with diabetes. Diabetes, very close to my heart because my father had type 2 diabetes. He really wasn't able to manage his life that well, and he ended up dying far too early from the complications of type 2 diabetes. When I was at medical school many years ago, we used to call this the sugar disease, and it makes it sound a little bit sweet and cuddly, but actually it's a deadly killer. If I think about in the UK, we have 3 million people, but throughout Europe and North America, we find that it's about a third of the adult population is at least pre-diabetic. That means they are at risk in the next 10 years of getting type 2 diabetes. And it's not just the wealthy countries of the world. The emerging economies, Nigeria, I spend a lot of time in Nigeria, Brazil, India has 100 million type 2 diabetics. 100 million type 2 diabetes, and it's increasing. The World Health Organization doesn't really know what to do just with type 2 diabetes. We have a national health service in Great Britain. 10% of all of what we fund in the National Health Service is on type 2 diabetes. We spend over £1 million every hour dealing with it. But financially is not just the only issue for type 2 diabetes. What about the human cost? I said it's a serious disease. If you think about half of the people who go blind, half of the people who have kidney failure, half of the people who have limb amputations have it due to diabetes. So it's a massive problem. It affects every cell in the body. It affects the way we look, our aging. Every aspect of our life is affected by it. So it's something we really need to get to grips with. So have a look at some stats from North America, and this kind of shows you the rate of type 2 diabetes over the years. You can see starting in 1980, way down in the left, roughly around 6 million people in North America had type 2 diabetes. Somewhere in the middle of the 90s, sometime in the middle of the 90s, it just kind of took off. And that kind of coincided with all the proliferation of high fructose corn syrup in a lot of our fizzy drinks and the amount of fizzy drinks that are available and the amount of refined sugar that was getting into our system. Interestingly, it kind of mirrors the obesity epidemic. As obesity goes up, so does type 2 diabetes. They're not always linked. You have people who are very slim and have type 2 diabetes. But remember, being slim doesn't just mean you're very healthy. If you've got that visceral fat, it can also lead to type 2 diabetes too. So let's go back a few years and look at one doctor who wanted to find out, why do people get type 2 diabetes? He went around the world, he looked at what people eat, and he said, well, maybe there's a correlation between what people eat and their rates of type 2 diabetes. So you can see there's the USA, Holland, England and Wales, Scotland, Italy and Japan. The dark columns represent how much carbohydrate is in the diet. The light columns represent how much fat is in the diet, and this line represents the amount of type 2 diabetes. Now, because you're all from this sunny place, I know you're all very intelligent. What can you tell me from this graph? Or let me ask you this. As you eat more carbohydrates, what happens to type 2 diabetes? It goes down. I can hear the incredulous voice. It goes down. Can't be. And as you eat more fat, what happens to type 2 diabetes? It goes up. That's right. So you see, in Japan here, lots of carbohydrate in the diet. very low rates of type 2 diabetes. In the USA, lower amounts of carbohydrate, which is unbelievable, but high rates of type 2 diabetes. What on earth is going on? Well, the interesting thing is that not all carbohydrates are the same. Did you know that? There are good carbohydrates and there are not so good carbohydrates. You see, in Japan, they are not eating donuts and cakes and sweets all the time. Their carbohydrate comes from fruit, vegetables, and grains. Good carbohydrates, always good for you. The more of that you eat, the lower your rates of type 2 diabetes. I'm just going to show you a little video that shows you on a cellular level why we get type 2 diabetes.
When you hear the word insulin, you may think of a drug taken by people who have diabetes. While this is true, what you may not know is that insulin is one of the many hormones created in the human body. Insulin is important to the body. It allows blood sugar, or glucose, to get into cells to provide them with energy. When you eat, your body breaks down food into glucose in your small intestine. This is your body's source of energy for everything it does, from working and thinking to exercising and healing. Glucose travels through your bloodstream looking for individual cells that need energy. For glucose to get into the cells, it requires insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks cells for glucose to enter and deliver energy. When insulin arrives, it signals the cell to activate glucose transporters. These transporters pull glucose through cell walls. When glucose moves into the cell, it delivers energy. Insulin is normally produced in the pancreas. When glucose enters your bloodstream, the pancreas matches it with the right amount of insulin to move glucose into your cells. In people with type 2 diabetes, the pancreas may not be doing its entire job. It may produce less and less insulin over time. If this happens, there isn't enough insulin in the bloodstream to unlock cells. With the cells locked, glucose can't get where it is needed to provide energy. In some type 2 diabetes patients, cells build up a resistance to insulin. Even though there may be enough insulin in the bloodstream, it can't unlock cells to allow glucose to enter. As a result, it takes more insulin to find the right key to unlock the cell for glucose. This makes it more difficult for cells to get the energy they need. When glucose can't get into cells, either because there isn't enough insulin or because the body is resisting it, glucose begins to build up in the bloodstream. As a result, all that energy is wasted. It does not get to cells where it is needed. Without glucose in your cells, they lack the energy they require to keep your body working.
So this shows us on a cellular level how we get type 2 diabetes. Let me just recap for you. Every single cell in your body, 50 trillion cells that we have in our body, require glucose to survive. Glucose is the fuel, the energy that gets every cell going. But glucose doesn't just pass into the cell. What has to happen is when you eat something with sugar in it, your body then has to release insulin from the pancreas. Insulin does something that I like to say is like it knocks on the door of the cell. Insulin knocks on the door of the cell and it tells the cell, open up for glucose. Right. Now, after 40 or 50 years of eating Mars bars, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's, with all of those insults of insulin knocking on the door, your cells start to say, look, I'm just tired. I'm not opening the door anymore. I say it's a bit like this game. I don't know if you ever heard of it, Knockdown Ginger. You ever heard of Knockdown Ginger? Are they just the British people who've heard of it? Oh, you have it in this country, Knockdown Ginger. Knockdown Ginger is the game that I used to play as a kid where you knock on somebody's door and you run away. I know you're all too good. You're all too good to do that sort of thing, I'm sure. But someone like me, I used to knock on people's door, run away. This was before computer games, obviously. I used to knock on people's door, run away, and hide. So someone would come to the door, they'd see there's nobody there, they'd close the door, and then I'd come back and knock on the door again. Right. Eventually, on the 5th time, nobody opens the door. That's a bit like how we get resistance in our cells. Eventually, the cells get tired of opening the door for insulin. So what they then do, they just stop, and we call this insulin resistance. By the way, this idea of knocking on the door and running away is still going on today. I think they call it UPS or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway. Just seeing if you're still awake after lunch. I don't know. But look, the important thing is that we have to differentiate between type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, it has the similar result. It's diabetes, but it's not caused by the same thing. Type 1 diabetes, and I'm going to try and squeeze it in somewhere during this week, is one of 100 or more of these autoimmune diseases where the body destroys parts of your own body. And when it destroys the pancreas, you don't produce enough insulin, that causes type 1 diabetes. It is not the result of a poor lifestyle. Type 1 diabetes is not the same thing. I'll say, but let's get back to this Western diet that is responsible for this diabesity, obesity and diabetes. High fat, sugar, salt, protein, low fiber, low nutrients. You know, in this society especially, North America is really the proponent of it. You can find people who have all the money in the world and can eat whatever they want to eat, but they have low nutrients because the food they eat doesn't have any nutrients in it. And, you know, we have this gentleman to thank for much of it, don't we? Ray Kroc, our famous friend, obviously responsible for the good old McDonald's. And that kind of typifies the Western diet. Now, I spend an awful lot of time in Nigeria. I go to Africa quite a lot. There's no McDonald's in Nigeria. There's no McDonald's in Nigeria, but I know McDonald's is coming to Africa quite soon, and we don't know what the results may be. But I always ask this question. Why is the Western diet so attractive and so addictive? What makes it so attractive? What makes it so addictive? And I always think that you can find the answer in the animal kingdom. Give me one interesting fact about a shark that you know. One interesting fact about a shark. No scales. Okay. Now for an interesting fact. No, I'm only joking. Any other facts you know about sharks? They turn white. Well, I've never seen that. I've never been attacked by a shark, but I'll look out for it next time. Look, something about sharks is that if you put one drop of blood in the sea, they can smell it about 1 kilometer away. That's quite remarkable. A kilometer. However dilute the blood is, a shark will home in on it and start moving towards that blood. Why is a shark designed that way? Well, let me ask you this. When a shark smells blood, is it smelling a healthy fish or an unhealthy fish? So an unhealthy fish is fast food for a shark, right? It's easy pickings. When you watch those nature programs, you find that most animals, they always try to do the easiest thing. When the lions are trying to get the buffalo, they don't go for the big buffalo. They always pack around the small one because that's easy food. And that's kind of how we're designed. We're designed to conserve energy. We're designed not to waste too much energy. We want to just get our food, get as much calories in, and move on. And that's how we are. They did this experiment with a load of rats. They had 1,000 rats, and they allowed those rats to eat as much sugar as they wanted. As much sugar as they wanted. What do you think happened to the rats? They died? They got diabetes? No, these rats lived a healthy life. They didn't become obese. They didn't even put on any weight. The rats would eat as much sugar as they wanted and then leave it. They then got another strain of rats and they gave them as much fat as they wanted to eat. Same thing happened. The rats ate the fat they wanted and left the fat they didn't want. What happened when they put a combination of sugar and fat together? The rats could not stop eating. You put that combination together and it was just too addictive. They could not stop. Now, where do we find this combination? We find it in the usual suspects. The cakes, the biscuits, the ice cream, the custard, and the chocolate. I have never yet met somebody say, when I have one celery stick, I have to eat the whole box. I've never seen that yet. But it always happens with biscuits and cakes and donuts. Look, obesity is becoming now an epidemic. More people are dying from overeating in the world than starvation. There are millions of people around the world dying of starvation. You know that. But more people are dying from overeating. This is a little bit absurd. And something else I want to tell you, that obesity is actually quite simple. Anybody do physics here? Physics? Any physics students? Well, physics, when I did physics many, many years ago, we found out that the fundamental laws of the universe are the laws of thermodynamics. Now, the laws of thermodynamics, they still haven't changed. It says that matter or energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can be converted from one form to another, but it can't be created and it cannot be destroyed. So when I have a patient come up to me, I don't tend to call them patients, we call them guests. You know, patience is about long suffering. We don't want to encourage that. But when I have a guest come to me and they say, Dr. Chidi, I don't know what's going on. I only eat one lettuce leaf a day. I only drink water. And somehow I've put on 50 kilos. When I think about this law, I say, well, you know, something's wrong. Either the laws of physics have changed, or maybe you're not remembering everything you've eaten. That's the thing. Because it is simple that we gain weight when we eat more calories than we burn up. It is actually that simple. And people often say to me, but I don't believe it because I'm just eating the same amount now as I used to when I was a teenager. I don't understand why I'm putting on weight. Well, you can understand it, and I call it the middle years. I call them the middle years because they refer to the middle of our life. Something tends to happen in the middle of our life. But also it makes our middle a little bit bigger. And let me explain why. You see, when I first qualified as a doctor, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the UK, in those days, this was in the 80s and 90s, when you qualify as a doctor, you are like the slave of the hospital. Everybody tells you what to do. You know, the cleaners, the cooks, the consultants, the nurses, you're just at the bottom of the pile. So you would spend your whole day running about doing menial tasks. That's what we did as junior doctors. You hardly get any time to rest. I used to calculate I would do about 20 kilometers every day on a shift. But then when you get a little bit more senior, you're a little bit older, they give you an office and they give you these junior doctors to run around for you. Now, if I'm still eating the same as when I was running around, I'm going to start to put weight on because I'm not burning up as much fuel. Now, this is why we say, in England, we say, beware of CCTV. You know what CCTV is? Closed circuit television. You know, these cameras everywhere. You know, Britain has more security cameras than anywhere on earth. We have one camera for every 10 people. They're everywhere. But I'm not referring to that. When I say beware CCTV, I'm referring to beware of the car, the couch, and the TV. These things are designed to make us put weight on. Honestly, they are. You're not quite as bad in Canada as they are in the USA, but, you know, in the USA, everything is drive. I go to California often. Everything is drive-through. You know, drive-through stores, drive-through banks. I saw a drive-through funeral. I mean, who is in such a hurry at a funeral? I mean, a drive-through funeral, it still boggles my mind. So what we have to try and do is start to burn up calories just by doing simple things. The couch. Did you know that just by standing, you will burn up twice the number of calories you would by sitting. What they found out, that if you stand, when I'm at work, I stand at my desk. I have a standing desk. And if you stand for 6 hours a day rather than sit at a desk for 6 hours a day, if you total up the number of calories, the excess calories you would have burnt, it would be the equivalent at the end of the year as if you had run 25 marathons. That's a marathon every other week, just by standing. So you don't need any gym membership. You don't even need to have to go out and have a run. To burn up weight, you just have to stand a bit more. Maybe some of the churches should get rid of all of the seats. You just have standing churches. Maybe it'll make the sermons a bit shorter. Oh, you wouldn't want that. Okay, fair enough. We're a bit different there, I guess. Right, so here's my question to you. Is it possible to be fit and fat? I'm allowed to use this word. It's a strong word, but I use it. Can you be fit and fat? How many people think you can be fit and fat? Let me see your hand. How many people think you cannot be fit and fat? Let me see your hands. How many people are too unfit to raise their hand? Let me see your hand. My goodness, what's going on up here? The truth is, you can certainly be fit and fat. There are people who are overweight who are healthier than most people, certainly healthier than me. Their blood pressure is low. Their blood sugar is low. They have low cholesterol. They may be overweight, but they're fit. And I say that so they can definitely be fit, but it can't last. That's the problem. And I'll tell you why. I want you to imagine two identical twins, and they have the same car, and they drive the equal distance, equal speed, they have the same performance all year. They then go to the mechanic at the end of the year, they look at the engine. What do you think? Would there be a difference between the engines? Not really, because they've done exactly the same thing. Exactly the same. Now think about it. It's the same. The next year they do exactly the same thing. They go the same distance, same speed, but one is carrying a 5-ton load, but they've got the same performance. Now at the end of that year, if you're carrying a 5-ton load, the engine, when you look at it, is going to be a bit more wrecked than the one without the 5-ton load. And that's what's happening when we're carrying a lot of weight. You can be fit, you can perform. I've seen very overweight people who can run marathons and they're performing very well, but your body has to use a lot of its resources. And at some point, the body says, you know what, I'm giving up. And that's when we get all the other diseases, the cancers, the diabetes. What we need to do is get to the root of this obesity problem, because it is at the center of a lot of the other issues that we have. So what we really want to know is, how can we reverse diabetes? That's what you've come for, right? How can you reverse it? So you're getting your pens out, and I think there's a hat coming around where you just put $50 in each, and once we collect that, we carry on with the lecture. Were you not warned about that? No? Okay, all right. I'll carry on just this time. Right, how do we reverse diabetes? Reverse diabetes and lose weight. Now what I'm about to tell you is what I've been using on many of my guests for many, many years. I'll tell you this also. We have never had a person with type 2 diabetes that we haven't been able to reverse. There's never been one person. So they all leave without their medication. You've seen how diabetes works. You've seen it on a molecular level. So what we have to try and do is reverse that process. Once you reverse that process, type 2 diabetes goes away. Right? There's nothing miraculous about it. But here's the first thing that you have to do. Eliminate all the simple sugars from your diet. Right? All the simple sugars. That means the cakes and the biscuits. I'm sure you have them here, but in some supermarkets we have these things called diabetic jam, diabetic cakes, diabetic ice cream. You know, that stuff is to keep you diabetic. You know that, right? That's why it's called diabetic. So there is no way you're going to get rid of type 2 diabetes eating that stuff. You have to eliminate all of those simple sugars. Now, folks, this does include juices, and it certainly includes alcohol. Alcohol is the worst thing when it comes to type 2 diabetes, but juices is not far behind. The amount of sugar in juice is just the same as the amount of sugar in a Coca-Cola or a lemonade. And the body doesn't care how pure it is. it is sugar that leads to type 2 diabetes. And I guess at this point I should give you my hierarchy of drinks, okay? My hierarchy of drinks. Obviously, at the top, the only drink we ever really need is what? Water. And you said that very confidently. I'm so happy to hear that. You know, I have a friend, he must be 70 years old. He looks incredibly fit. When people ask him, well, how do you do it? He says, you know what? I've only drunk water for the last 30 years. He has no other drink, just water. And you know what? All the animals in the wild, that's all they drink too. They're not having Coca-Cola, coffee, and tea. And they're looking perfect with it. And they don't have the diabetes and all the other issues we have. So eliminate that. So water is the only one we need. Way below water, if you really need to have something, why not have a blended smoothie? So that's still got all of the fiber, all of the fruit, so it's blended and it's all there. Below that, I would then say are the freshly squeezed juices that you may have. Below that are the other juices you can find in the shops, then the other sweet drinks. Below that, alcohol. But right at the bottom, at the place where you should never, ever go, are the artificially sweetened drinks. The Coke Zeros, the Lemonade Zeros, all those things. Those are the most toxic drinks that we can put into our bodies. They cause, for young women, they cause strokes, by the way. Aspartame, you know, anything with aspartame in it cause strokes. For young men, they cause blood cancers. For children, brain tumors. You might ask yourself, well, how on earth can this be marketed to us? How can we all be consuming so much of it and it's so toxic for us? It's a long story, but there was a gentleman by the name of, do you remember the man named Donald Rumsfeld? You know, he was the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense in Bush's regime. Well, he had a lot to do with making aspartame legal. You thought the Iraq War was terrible. Well, what else he's done is pretty bad as well. Okay, so that's the hierarchy of drinks. The next thing you have to do is cut out all of the white stuff, all of the white stuff. It's not a racist statement. I'm talking about rice, potatoes, pasta, and bread, okay? Just in case any of you were thinking, what is this guy talking about? You see, that white stuff, if you're a type 2 diabetic and you're eating white rice, it's like having a spoonful of sugar every single time. You have to really stay away from it. And what I then say, and this is what I do for all of my guests, by the way, all type 2 diabetics, for at least 2 weeks, the only thing you can eat are vegetables, beans, and greens, right? Vegetables, beans, and greens. Somebody will ask me, what about rice? Vegetables, beans, and greens. What about fruit, Dr. Chidi? Vegetables, beans, and greens. For 2 weeks, and you can only drink water. Now, what then I'll come back to you. Any beans. Okay, so any beans you like, by the way. You can always find some beans that you like. Right, so what then happens is that your body then starts to miss the insulin, because you're not going to produce lots of insulin when you're eating this stuff. Your cells then start to become sensitive to insulin again. Type 2 diabetes is reversing. Imagine that. You know, as I say, every single guest I've had has reversed their type 2 diabetes. It doesn't matter how old they are. Now, if this could happen, you can save people from so much medication, all the complications and side effects of them too. Right, so 2 weeks is all you really need to start the reversal process. You then need to be managed by somebody, a physician hopefully, but that's what it really takes. Now, some of you are saying to me, that sounds good, but it's difficult because I'm used to eating my cakes and my whatever. How am I going to overcome this desire? By the way, I don't stand before you as somebody who has never had an issue with sugar. I stand before you, I have to confess to you, I feel like it's a bit like a confessional. I confess to you that I'm probably the worst sugar addict you've ever met. I am. Because I've never met anybody as bad as me. I mean, there was a time once when I was 3 months without sugar at all. I was feeling really confident and happy with myself. I was in the kitchen. My wife came home. She brought home a huge cake. Now, she doesn't have the issues that I have. She can have a little slice and leave it. I'm not one of those people. And I said to her, why did you bring back a huge cake? Oh, sometimes we need a bit of a variety. I said, look, can you please just get the cake out of my sight, put it away, put it in the fridge, I don't want to see it. All day I'm thinking about the cake. I go to bed, I'm awake all night, looking at the ceiling, thinking about the cake. So I'm saying, well, how am I going to get to sleep? Maybe if I just go down and have a look at this cake, it will satisfy me, and I can then go and get some sleep. I go down, I have a look at the cake. Well, maybe if I have a wafer-thin slice, just so that I taste it. No calories there, surely. Look, you know the end of the story. I finished the cake that night, okay? And this is one of my mild problems. I'm telling you, I have been a terrible sugar addict most of my life. So I have to try and avoid sugar in the same way that an alcoholic avoids alcohol. So I came up with this method. It's called the Dr. Chidi method, to avoid and overcome those cravings. The Dr. Chidi method says this: look, when you see that cake or that donut, the worst thing you can ever say to yourself is, I must not eat the cake. If you say that, you want it even more. You know that, right? If there's something you're not supposed to do, you want it even more. So the best thing you should really say is, look, I'm going to have this cake, but I'm going to have it in half an hour. If at the same time you eat something like an apple, as you eat that apple, your blood sugar slowly rises. Not rapidly, that's going to cause all that insulin to come, but it slowly rises. As it slowly rises, you then have enough sugar in your system to overcome the desire for the cake. So some of you are thinking, well, even after the half an hour, I'm going to want the cake. Let's be honest, people. Well, if that happens, do the same thing again. Maybe at the end of the day, you've eaten 5 apples. That's pretty good, right? That's not bad. And maybe once in a while, you may have slipped. It's okay. Don't kill yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Just move on. We call it the Dr. Chidi method because it stands for don't resist it, choose to have it, but delay it. Don't resist it, choose to have it, but delay it. You can apply this principle to many different issues in life. When you're going past that shop and you must have those shoes, don't resist it, choose to have it, but delay it. I'm not talking about whether it's the men or the women who have these cravings, but it's just useful for us all. Here's another thing. Look, perhaps you failed on the Dr. Chidi method. I need a volunteer for this one. Who can come forward? Everybody looks away, their blood pressure goes up. Please don't pick me. Oh yes, my British person. Come forward. Oh, okay, you. Oh, you're both British, aren't you? Okay, you're in the front, you may as well come. Yeah. And just remind us of your name? Caroline. Good to see you, Caroline. Right, I just want you to think, if I give you this task, I'm not going to get you to do it, but just to think about it. If I want you to eat 4 apples very quickly, so to eat 4 apples within 2 minutes, total, which apple are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the Golden Delicious, or would you choose the Granny Smiths? You want to eat these quickly. Which would you use? The Golden Delicious. You'd go for the Golden Delicious. How many people would go for the Golden Delicious? Let me see your hands. How many people would go for the Granny Smiths? There's always some weird people in the audience. That's good. It's good to have you marked. I know how to avoid people now. Thank you very much. And thank you very much. Take a seat. Give her a round of applause, please. Most normal people would choose Golden Delicious because it's sweet. The Granny Smiths, if you try and eat those quickly, they're quite painful. It's quite sour. It's painful. I mean, I don't know. Some weird people who like pain, I don't know. But here's what it does. Look, if you're eating those donuts, you've lost control, you failed on the Dr. Chidi method. What we find is if you take a bite of something sour like a Granny Smith apple, it actually inhibits your appetite for sugar. Just one bite of something sour or something bitter So if you're eating lots of milk chocolate, have one bite of dark chocolate. That will slow down your appetite. So that's when you're really falling and failing. We tend to say that bitter is better and sour has power. Now, we're talking a lot about what we can eat, what we can't eat. I think most people know these things. But here's something we rarely talk about when it comes to losing weight especially. You see, all of us have these cravings for a reason. A lot of us call it even comfort eating. You've heard that phrase. So we can talk a lot about what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat, but how about why do we eat what we eat? Because there's no point just giving people diets. Most diets actually don't work because we never address what's going on inside. It's always there. So if we have issues that we still haven't yet resolved, if there is a sense of guilt that hasn't been fully resolved as well, if there's somebody we still need to forgive, if there's something that happened to us back in our childhood that we still haven't dealt with, these things build up. And even if we don't think about them consciously, we try to smother them with food. And one of the easiest ways is to have this addiction for sugar. For some people, it goes to alcohol. For some other people, it goes to drugs. But unless we deal with those deep issues, we can never be free from this diet. We can never be free from that pull of the cake, of the donut. This is a picture that was used in an experiment many years ago, comparing. Anybody been to France? Anybody been to Paris? Great, lovely, beautiful place. Well, there's something interesting about French people. They eat lots of unhealthy stuff. They drink loads of alcohol, but very few of them are overweight. Have you noticed that? Very, very few are overweight. So they did this experiment where they took a load of French people and they compared them with a load of American people. Let's just say Americans don't look like the French. I'll leave it there, right? I'm leaving it there. To him who has an ear, let him understand. And they said, look, when they were showed a picture like this, the French people, well, the Americans said, well, look, when we see that, we think of a guilty pleasure, calories, putting on weight. I need to avoid it. Okay, we all understand that. When they show this to a group of French people, the French people, when they see that, they say celebration, happy time, family, getting together. So it's a positive time and not a negative time. And here's the thing about food. A calorie is not always a calorie. And what I mean by that is that if I am stressed and I eat something like this chocolate cake, more of that chocolate cake will be converted to fat than if I'm not stressed. So if I'm eating it as a celebration, I'm not worried about it. It's less likely to do me harm. And also, it is less likely that I'm going to repeat it time after time after time. If I feel guilty about something, if I've eaten it and I now feel guilty, you are more likely to do it again. That is what the evidence shows us. So here's what I say to you, and this, you may never hear this from a health lecturer, is that if you do eat something like this, at least enjoy it. What is the point of eating that and making yourself miserable for the rest of the day? If you're going to eat that, at least enjoy it, savor it. Don't wolf it down, just enjoy every part of it. Because you are less likely to go back and do it again, all right? Does that make sense? Good. All right, so what else do we need to do to reverse type 2 diabetes? If you're doing that, what we want to do is limit yourself to 2 meals per day, 2 meals per day. And that means you get a big break. So you get the break overnight where you have your breakfast, but then you have another break during the day. And what that does is allow you to feel hungry. When you're feeling hungry, your cells become more sensitive to insulin. And because you feel hungry doesn't mean you're going to die, folks. I can guarantee you that. Feeling hungry, many of us don't get the chance to feel hungry because we eat at certain times. But Allow yourself to feel hungry, and what your body is then saying is, look, if you don't give me any food, I'm going to take food from other parts of your body. And that's what we want, right? So just having periods of hunger is actually good for us. By the way, if you were to sum up most of the health advice that any scientist can give you, all the health advice that we know right now, and to make it simple, the best way to avoid all of these big diseases is to be hungry more. That's it. We know that if we starve rats and monkeys, they live longer. If we starve human beings, they live longer. So the less calories you take in, the healthier your life is going to be. Make sure after each meal you get up immediately and go for a walk. It's very interesting, this, because I remember when I was a kid reading this statement from Ellen White, after every meal, go for a walk. And being a young, precocious guy, I thought, nah, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you go for a walk immediately after eating, you get indigestion, don't you? That's what I thought. But actually, today, the most modern science that we know today tells us that when you eat food, the only cells in your body that don't need insulin to let glucose in are your muscles and your brain. So when you're walking immediately after a meal, even any small rises in blood sugar go down because they're all being absorbed by your big muscles. Fantastic. So after each meal, you go for a walk. I suggest for at least an hour. Some people say to me, oh, doctor, I bought myself a dog to increase the amount I'm going to be walking. I say, that's very good, but just make sure you walk the dog properly, okay? Only in America, of course. We have to get rid of some of these habits. Look at this. I mean, this is a fitness club. People are going there to get fit. Nobody can walk up the stairs. You get in the escalator to the gym. Even in my own gym, I saw a fight break out because there were two people. One got that beautiful parking spot in front of the entrance and somebody else wanted it. They're coming to the gym to work out, but nobody could walk through the car park to the gym. So some of these habits that we have, we need to start breaking down. Health has got to be about a lifestyle change, folks. And if you make this lifestyle change, you can do things that probably you never could have imagined.
When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in rivers, and the tears come streaming down your face, when you lose something you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste, could it be worse? Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. And high up above or down below, when you're too in love to let it go, but if you never try, you'll never know just what you want. Lights will guide
Anything is possible. You know, I particularly like that video, and I like it especially when you see the gentleman and he's still about nearly 300 pounds and he's walking down the road on his own, and it kind of symbolizes for me that when you want to make a lifestyle change in your life, often you have to walk alone. Even in your family, you often just have to do it on your own. Maybe you have to start cooking your own food, doing your own thing. And I often think, I wonder what people were thinking when they were driving past him, looking at him. They must have been thinking, oh, what does he think he's doing, just walking down? What does he hope to achieve? But it's interesting, when God puts a message in your heart, it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. If he puts it in your heart, he will see it to completion. He will do it. If you are partnering with him, it's amazing what having a lifestyle change in your own personal life can do. I mean, for example, the president of our union, nobody recognizes him now because he lost so much weight. And so many people are looking at him and saying, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And this works for everything, not just weight loss, but whatever issues we need to do on a physical level. Sometimes we have to do it on our own. It feels like you're doing it on your own, but you are actually never alone. God is with us. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about cancer. The day after, I said we're going to be talking about high blood pressure and heart disease. Then we go on to depression. I should tell you that I did bring with me some DVDs. The DVDs show you how to reverse and prevent all of these different illnesses, and we'll make those available to you. But if you have any questions right now, please feel free to ask. The time is yours. If we have the mics for the audience, that would be wonderful. Just put your hand up and ask a question. So just wait for the mic. Just keep your hands up so they can see you. Yeah. Okay, great.
Can you repeat why exercising after you eat doesn't interfere with your digestion?
Okay, so just make sure everybody heard that. The question is, well, why doesn't exercising after you eat interfere with digestion? Now, if you were going to run a marathon or run the 100-meter sprint, it would interfere with your digestion because your blood would need to be rapidly diverted to those muscles. But having a brisk walk doesn't do that. Having a brisk walk is a gentle exercise. It will still allow enough blood to be used in your bowels to absorb your food while still keeping your muscles exercising. So it doesn't interfere, but what it does is make sure that the glucose in your blood, even though it starts to rise, can quickly be absorbed. Okay, so it doesn't interfere with your digestion at all. Next question. Is there someone on this side? If you can go to the person. Yeah, that's right. Go ahead.
So in one of your first slides, you mentioned about eliminating everything white, and you listed a number of white things.
Yes.
Is that like, for example, white potatoes? I've always understood, well, potatoes are low in calories per unit weight, that they're a fairly healthy item to eat as a potato. And you're really saying that people should avoid potatoes, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about people who are trying to reverse type 2 diabetes. Potatoes have a lot of sugar in them, and they release sugar very quickly into your system. That's the key. Whether they have a lot of sugar or not isn't the big key. The big key is how quickly do they release sugar into your system. Because the quicker they release sugar in, the quicker your body's going to have to deal with that sugar, so the more insulin that has to be raised. So yeah, white potatoes, white rice, white pasta, white bread, avoid. Yes, yes.
I noticed in your list of getting rid of biscuits and cakes and so on, how is honey, natural honey out of bees, compared to your list?
Yes, I get this question quite a lot. When you say try and get rid of simple sugars, but what about honey? What about molasses? What about maple syrup? Okay, so all of these things are pure sugar. Doesn't matter how healthy that you may think they are pure sugar. You cannot reverse type 2 diabetes and have a lot of honey in your diet. It's not possible. It's pure carbohydrate.
So back to the potatoes.
Yes.
Because these are farmers that eat potatoes.
Yes.
Okay. So if a potato has its skin on and it's a red potato, is it better?
Okay, so we're getting down to the potatoes. So now, I want you to remember, that was talking about reversing type 2 diabetes, right? And this is the first few weeks. No potatoes. No potatoes at all, right? So give yourself a few weeks a break of potatoes. Eventually, by the way, and you'll see it if you've ever seen the full lecture or the DVD, you can introduce potatoes after. Once diabetes is gone, you can introduce them. Potatoes is not so bad. I would never really want to reintroduce white bread or white pasta, but you can introduce potatoes and sweet potatoes, but what you have to do is get over this type 2 diabetes first. So it's not for life, you know. I couldn't live without potatoes myself. So, you know, I come from Britain, fish and chips, you know. Did I say fish and chips? Sorry about that. Anyway, yes. Next. Where are you?
I'm over here.
Where? Okay, yeah.
You said 2 weeks, vegetables, greens, and beans. Breakfast, lunch, and supper?
I said 2 meals a day.
Oh, yeah, okay. 2 meals a day. Vegetables, greens, and beans for 2 meals a day for 2 weeks, 14 days.
That is correct.
That's 28 meals. Ooh.
Yes. You're going to have to eat 28 meals anyway, so you may as well be vegetables, greens, and beans. Are you trying to get around that question by saying, what about some fruit? What about, yes, yes. So this is the point that always happens. It is just vegetables, greens, and beans. Salt is not a big issue when you're dealing with diabetes, but some salt is okay. Yeah. Who's got the mic? Yes. The mic.
Yeah. Does it have to be a question about today's lecture?
No, it can be anything.
You were talking about the autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
What about Hashimoto's?
Yes. Okay, so I did mention that type 1 diabetes was a autoimmune disease. And so the autoimmune diseases are where your immune system is attacking you. Right? So it may attack your thyroid gland, it may attack your joints. So it doesn't matter where it's attacking, it's the same treatment. So we know what causes it. The biggest reason why our immune cells attack our cells is because they've been sensitized to milk protein and wheat protein. Right? Milk protein and wheat protein. Refined sugar makes it even worse. And low levels of vitamin D just seals the whole deal, right? So you have to have high vitamin D, avoid the wheat and dairy, and sugar, all right? So those are really the answers. Who's got the mic now?
We're here.
Yes.
Okay, if we are trying to reverse diabetes and go on the greens and the beans and the vegetables, what do we do about our prescription drugs pertaining to diabetes?
Yes, for type 2 diabetes, most people are on prescription medication. So this is why really you need to be working with somebody like a physician. What I do with my guests is they come off of their medication. Now, how can that be? That seems a bit dangerous, right? But remember, type 2 diabetic medication is there to lower your blood sugar. That's what it's there for. Whether it's insulin or the tablets, it's there to lower your blood sugar. If you're on a diet of beans, greens, and vegetables, your blood sugar does not rise very high. If you were to go on your medication, you would find that it would go too low. That's why you need to have supervision. So most people are able to come off their medication once they've started this program. And then after about 4 weeks, you find that they can come back to a more normal diet, still maintaining the absence of medication. All right? Yes. Next.
Well, I thought he had one up there.
If you don't have type 2 diabetes, but you're overweight, you follow the same plan. Is that correct? For 2 weeks?
Right, so if you're just overweight and you don't have type 2 diabetes, you don't have to be quite as strict, right? Because you don't have to do this 2-week plan. But the more greens, the more beans, the more vegetables you have in your diet, and the less of the refined carbohydrates, the quicker the weight will come away. But as I'm saying, it's not just about losing the weight physically. It's actually also thinking about what's going on in my head. Why am I eating the way I do? I had to do that myself. Why do I eat the way I do? Why do I have the same compulsions as my father? Because my father, though he was a type 2 diabetic, I knew the sort of things he liked to eat, and I have the same addictions myself. So I have to think about why. Why is that? Okay. Yes.
What do you think about supplements?
Yeah, I mean, I promote, for example, vitamin D3. I mean, I should go into business with you or something, because vitamin D3, I promote it like there is no tomorrow. Vitamin D3, everybody really should be on it. I believe that. And I used to actually work for a supplement company, but the only thing I would promote was vitamin D3, so I didn't last very long. But so some supplements like vitamin D, fantastic. Others we have to be a bit careful about, okay? Because, and depending on their source, and you'd give us more information on this, depending on their source, they can be very good for you, or sometimes they're not quite so good and sometimes detrimental, okay? But vitamin D3, by the way, everybody should be on vitamin D3, roughly 10,000 units per day. You don't take it with calcium, never take it with calcium, because vitamin D3 is actually a steroid that makes you absorb more calcium. So we need to be on about 10,000 units of vitamin D per day. If you have an illness like thyroid disease or anything like that, you need to be on 20,000 units. I've been taking 10,000 units for about 15 years. No issues whatsoever. Right. Next question.
What about hypoglycemia?
Hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
What about it?
The low blood sugar. Well, what type of a diet would you recommend for that?
So somebody who has hypoglycemia naturally.
Yes.
Right. So what you would have to find out, make sure there is no issues that are causing you to have hypoglycemia, because sometimes there are growths that release insulin that can cause you to have hypoglycemia. So once you're cleared of that, well, then you know what, you're a bit blessed, because it means you can probably eat more calories in your diet, yeah, if you want to. But if I was going to advise you, I would say the calories should come in the form of beans, nuts, those sorts of, rather than refined sugar. Yes. Who's next? Yes, yeah.
About the beans, that would be not the canned stuff with the sauce, is that correct?
That's right. So just the natural beans that you grow in your farms and gardens.
Hypothyroid, low thyroid.
Yeah.
Would you still go 10,000 or more on the D3?
So hypothyroid, you would go 20,000 units per day. So any autoimmune disease that you have, you need to be on at least 20,000 units per day. Okay. But and if you're hypothyroid, if you have even a partially functioning thyroid gland, that can be totally reversed. Totally reversed. Okay. Great.
So with fruits and vegetables, but some people consider a tomato a vegetable and some consider it a fruit. Jackfruit, fruit, vegetable. What kind of vegetables besides dark greens do you recommend?
Yeah, so any vegetables, and yeah, you're right, a tomato is really a fruit, but you know, there's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The difference between knowledge and wisdom is about the tomato, isn't it? You see, if you have knowledge, you know that the tomato is a fruit. If you have wisdom, you don't put it in your fruit salad, yeah? So you can have vegetables. Treat the tomato as a vegetable. Absolutely. But actually any vegetable you want, you can eat. So dark greens, especially dark greens, vegetables, and beans. Perfect. Yes.
I have polycystic ovarian syndrome,
right.
and so you hypersecrete insulin, but you're not necessarily a diabetic, but prone to obesity.
Yes.
modern world, I guess, says that a paleo diet is beneficial. What are your thoughts?
So polycystic ovaries, for those of you who don't know, it's where you're just making lots of cysts on your ovaries, right? Now, what I always like to do as a lifestyle medic, we always like to find out, well, why is this happening? Why does somebody make more cysts on their ovaries than anybody else? Well, we do know this. There's enough research on it. We're told that the cysts are programmed to grow by the estrogen that we produce. Right. So now, well, when I say we, I mean women produce. So sometimes women can produce a lot of estrogen, sure. But the biggest issue is how much estrogen we all take in, male or female. 90% of the estrogen that we ingest comes from dairy products. So one thing I always say is, look, the first thing to do is just limit the dairy, get rid of it. Refined sugars or anything very sweet also increases the amount of steroids we release. So if you get rid of the milk and the sugar together, you tend to find that this polycystic ovarian system tends to go away. It may take a couple of months, but it does go away. So it's trying to get to the root cause. And what you find is that refined sugar mucks up your hormone balance as well. So once you get yourself off of that, you come back to a normal place. Try that, and let's see. So you're not tired yet of all these questions? I mean, no. Was it just me? Go.
Right, you made a connection a few minutes ago between vitamin D and thyroid, and then you said something about low thyroid disease can be reversed, but you didn't really, how do you reverse it? And can you repeat the part about the thyroid and the vitamin D, and then how do you reverse a low thyroid?
Yeah, so, I mean, really that's another lecture, but let me just try and summarize it. So just like all those other autoimmune diseases that I showed, let me get back there. So all of these are autoimmune diseases, and there are about 400 different autoimmune diseases. And you can see there hyperthyroid, hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, all of these things. We treat them exactly the same. So what we do, we stop the stimulus, because hypothyroidism is when your antibodies are attacking your thyroid gland, and they're destroying your thyroid gland. So there's no point just trying to replace the thyroxine. Why don't we stop the antibodies from attacking? How do you do that? You eliminate dairy, you eliminate wheat in particular. 4 minutes, thank you. You eliminate wheat in particular, refined sugar, and you have high-dose vitamin D3. If you can do that under some supervision, actually the disease goes away. My wife had hyperthyroidism. She went to her doctor. Her doctor scared her, said, oh, you're going to die if you don't take medication. Well, before she even got the prescription of medication, we changed her diet. We just refined her diet. We got rid of the milk, we got rid of the sugar, we gave her some dark green smoothies. Her thyroid levels for the last 5 years have been normal. The antibodies that attack, because you can get a blood test for the antibody levels, those have come down consistently over the years. So once you know the root cause of the problem, you can get rid of it. There's no hocus pocus about it. I'm not peddling you any potions or notions. It's just simply reversing the physiology that caused the disease. Great. Who's next? Yes.
So where does almond milk fiddle into the picture?
Where does almond milk fit in? Anywhere you want.
Is it good?
Almond milk is very good. All these plant milks are very good, whichever one you want. And here's the interesting thing, because some people say, oh, I don't like soya milk, but there's so many different milks. There's almond, hazelnut, rice milk. Don't give rice milk to me, though. That just looks like grey water. I don't want any of that. But you will find a milk that suits you. Any plant milk is great for you. But it's better that you get the ones that are more organic. And by that, I mean the ones that haven't got loads of additives in it. So I get a soya milk that just says soya beans and water. That's it. That's perfect. Yeah? Yeah, okay, for what we're talking about, the GMO doesn't really matter, but you're right to raise it because it is significant. You know, because if you're going to muck about with the DNA of anything, it's going to have a knock-on effect. Great. But for what we're talking about, you don't have to. So we're going to have the last question. Who gets the last question of the day? Well, if the person's got their hand up, they'll want a question. Okay, so this is the last one. Yes. Okay.
I guess it's me.
You do.
I guess
Yes.
it's me. Please help me to understand. My understanding is that vitamin D3 is fat soluble.
Yes.
So I guess what is the top, or how far can you go with?
Yes, that's a very good question. So the question is, vitamin D is fat soluble. Now, if you have a fat soluble vitamin, that means it can be stored in our fat and can continue to be released. And sometimes people think that can be quite toxic. Well, look, here's the good news about vitamin D. I can give you some homework to look into it. Look at research papers, not just people's opinions. You're not going to find anybody overdosing on vitamin D. They did a test, I can't remember how many years ago, but over 5 years ago, where they were giving people 150,000 units of vitamin D every day, for months. And they cause no issues. So what I say is at least 20,000. If you're in the throes of a disease, you need at least 20,000. If your doctor takes your vitamin D levels, they will be sky high. Mine are sky high. And they will say, oh no, you need to lower. But they don't know about how to reverse these diseases. Usually when they're giving you vitamin D, it's to strengthen your bones only. But they're not talking about reversing diseases like this. Okay, I'm letting you, because you have the mic, you can have the very last question.
Actually, my question is going to be the same thing.
Oh!
But in Canada, you can only buy it in the health food store in 1,000, but you can actually get a prescription for 10,000.
Right, okay, so you can get prescriptions at 10,000. But a lot of these shops, Whole Foods and all that, I get Nature's Answer, vitamin D. Why am I advertising somebody else's brand? Maybe I should have a Dr. Chidi's vitamin D3, I don't know. But Nature's Answer, each drop is 2,000. So I just have 10 drops in the morning after brushing my teeth. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about cancer. Anybody who needs to get any of these DVDs, come and see me. But thank you very much for your attention. See you tomorrow.
Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.